Let me ask you guys a question. When it comes to NBA injuries, which season do you think was the most ruined in NBA history? What if I told you that it might have been this last season? Does that sound a bit too much? Maybe a bit dramatic? Possibly. But when you look over the list of injuries, how it affected different games and different series, I think it legitimately has a great case. Let's start off by looking at the Dallas Mavericks. After the Luka Doncic trade, the one silver lining with the Mavericks was that they were still a pretty deep team that was in a position to compete immediately. Well, to the surprise of absolutely no one, Anthony Davis basically got injured immediately. But with that being said, in the first half of his first game with the Mavericks, AD had 23 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. Again, in only the first half. Then he got the non-contact injury and proceeded to miss the next 18 games for the Mavericks, as they continued to plummet in the standings. And then, as the final nail in the coffin of their season, was when Kyrie Irving tragically tore his ACL. This was a team that was supposed to be an immediate championship contender out of the West, and instead, they couldn't even make it into the playoffs. Those were not the only big injuries in the regular season. You also had one of the most exciting players in the NBA today in Victor Wembanyama, but unfortunately, his blood clots prematurely shut down his season. And sure, the Spurs were not necessarily in the playoff picture when that happened, but at the very least, they were on the cusp of being a bubble team, and seeing that alien compete when the games actually mattered would have been exciting. To add insult to injury, they then lost De'Aaron Fox, further solidifying the end of their season. One of the major injuries that a lot of people forget about was when Franz Wagner of the Orlando Magic went down. This guy was a dark horse candidate for the MVP award when he got injured. Leading up to his injury, Orlando was extremely hot, as they had won 16 out of their last 25 games. But then after the injury, the momentum completely shifted, as they then went 7-13 while Wagner was out. Ultimately, they were never able to regain the same level of momentum that they had earlier in the season, as they finished the year with only a 41-41 record. Then you had Damian Lillard of the Milwaukee Bucks. And sure, he didn't have the best tenure with Milwaukee, as him and Giannis could never quite blend together like we initially expected when they first became teammates. But with that being said, they did have a 38-30 record at the time of the injury. So they were playoff bound, and anytime you have the opportunity to see Dame time in the postseason, you've got to pay attention. But then, that's when he tore his Achilles, which basically ended their postseason run before it even got started. Then of course, you also had Jason Tatum, whose season was also shut down with an Achilles tear. Now to be fair, when the injury happened, Boston was down in the series 2-1 to the New York Knicks. And it did look like they were about to fall 3-1 based on the score in the fourth quarter. So it is unlikely that even if he remained healthy, that Boston would have been able to make the comeback. But with that being said, they are one of the recent NBA champions, and in the past, they have come back from similar playoff circumstances to win a series. So at the very least, it was still possible. Then, one of the most devastating injuries of the season, if you ask me, was when Steph Curry strained his hamstring. Now remember, the Warriors were one of the hottest teams in the league and had just eliminated the second-seeded Houston Rockets out of the Western Conference playoffs. The tandem of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler was starting to look like a legitimate title contender. And with these two clutch big-game performers, we were believing that anything was possible. But here's the craziest part about this Warriors team. The Warriors were one of only 2 teams in the league to actually have a winning record against the Oklahoma City Thunder this season. They were 2-1 against the Thunder in the regular season, and in the games that Steph Curry actually played, they were undefeated against this year's champions. As you always hear, the NBA is a game of matchups, and based on what we were seeing throughout this season, they might have been the best team suited to defeat the 68-win OKC Thunder in the NBA playoffs. But as we all know, Steph Curry went down as they were just about to take a 1-0 series lead over the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference semifinals. And in Steph Curry's absence, they had no chance whatsoever as they proceeded to lose the next 4 games straight. And then, the most devastating injury of them all was when Tyrese Haliburton tore his Achilles in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. As you all know, Tyrese was extremely hot to start Game 7, and looked like he was about to have an iconic performance on the game's biggest stage, as he had 9 points in the first 7 minutes alone, including 3 long-range bombs. It wasn't just Tyrese though, but several members of the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers alone had 3 different players that season who were lost to an Achilles tear. On top of that, Tyrese Haliburton, Jason Tatum, and Damian Lillard all going down meant that arguably 3 out of the top 20 players in the NBA today were all lost to one of the most devastating injuries in all of basketball. When you look at the potential playoff series that were affected, the potential classic games that we lost, and some of the potential magical moments that were never able to materialize, you can see how this season truly has a case for being the most ruined season in NBA history due to injuries. Again, there are some other great candidates as well, so let me know in the comments section below what other season needs some consideration. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.